Okay. Aloha mai kākou. Ua iho no Kamalei Marrotte a he limahana, he mea kākou, a he mea mālama panela hoi. My name is Kamalei Marrotte, and I'm a limahana here at Native Books, and I also am a blog author or a columnist, and also a moderator for today. I would like to mahalo everyone for joining us for our second installment of ʻŌlelo Kaiāulu. This series was initially started to talk about the different places and spaces that ʻŌleloHawai'i lives and thrives within the community outside of a formal university setting. And without further ado, I'd like to allow Presley to introduce herself. Presley, aloha mai.
Aloha, mahalo Kamalei. Aloha nui mai kākou. Mahalo for having me here today. To introduce myself, I'm going to do a really short PowerPoint to talk about some of the things that I do. So if I could please share screen. Oh, I raised my hand, sorry. Okay, so aloha nui mai kākou. Wau o Presley Keʻalaanuhea a moksang a he kupa keia no Papakolea Oahu. My name is Presley Amoksang again, and I am from Papakolea on the island of Oahu. To better share about how I got to the point where I am at currently in my life and how I came up to, I guess, create some of the things that we're going to be talking about, I like to share about my upbringing because that my foundation and how I came to be the person I am today. So I was raised in Papakolea by my grandparents. My grandfather is Hawaiian and my grandmother is actually English. So it was a very interesting upbringing. I'm one of 16 cousins, and we all kind of were at the house in Papakolea at any given time being cared for by my grandparents. But my grandfather, the way that I like to share him with other people is that he was a super nerd. And he had a special place in his heart for me because he thought I was smart. So as a super nerd, some of the things he would do when he was off of work was his favorite thing to do was to do research, especially in genealogy work. And he used to go to the archives, and sometimes I'd be lucky enough where he would take me to the archives and would kind of hang out there. So from a very, very young age, he taught me that being a nerd and doing research was very, very cool. You couldn't get me away from my grandfather because I thought he was the coolest person alive. So a lot of how I ended up being the way that I am now is due to his upbringing. I lived with him until he got sick, and he passed away when I was a teenager, about 14 years old. And at the time of his passing, I actually didn't speak Hawaiian then. My story is similar to a lot of Hawaiians now, where for some reason, our kupuna decided that it was in their best interest and for the better interest of their children and mo'opuna to speak the language of the colonizers. And I don't need to go into the history of that because we all know what happened there, but I'm a byproduct of that, right? So growing up, Hawaiian was not my first language. I, of course, spoke English, and I grew up in Homestead, so Pidgin was the way that I communicated. But upon his passing, he taught me so many things in regards to my culture, in regards to ʻŌlelo, how to research genealogy. He passed down stories to me. But one thing that he always wanted his grandchildren to do, he wasn't one of those people who were like, I don't want you to do this. He wanted us to embrace our Hawaiianness, and he wanted us to speak Hawaiian, and he was very into mele. So he was into music. His mother was a big time musician. So he had a very soft spot in his heart for those types of things, and he tried to encourage me and my cousins to start to learn that. So upon his passing, at his funeral, my auntie Kau'i sang, who works for the Office of Hawaiian Education now. At that time, I believe she was either going to school or just finished getting her degrees, and was focused on immersion education. She might have been teaching in the Kulakaiapuni at that point, but she kind of suggested to all us cousins that we should write a speech for our grandfather in Hawaiian if we can. Of course, I couldn't, but I'm the kind of person that if someone gives me a challenge, I'm going to do it. So I decided I'm going to figure out how to write something in Hawaiian, and I'm going to read it for my grandfather because he would love this. So I went on his bookshelf and I found a copy of ʻŌleloHawai'i, and I read through the entire book, and I puzzled things together and wrote this little speech for my papa about how much I loved him. And that was the start of me getting into really learning the Hawaiian language. Kind of teaching myself, reading the dictionary, reading anything that I could find, and then eventually formally enrolling within classes at the university setting. So these are my accolades. I graduated from Kamehameha Kapalama in 2008. After graduating from high school, I didn't really know what I was going to do. But one of the things that you have to do at Kamehameha in order to graduate is you have to apply for a college. And I really honestly, I wasn't looking at colleges at that point in time. I just knew if I wanted to graduate, I needed to go and apply for a school now. And the easiest one for me to do at that point in time was the University of Hawaii at Manoa because I was living on Oahu. So I applied to go to school. I got in. I didn't even know if I was going to go, but there's really nothing else for me to do. So I went to school because that's what everyone else was doing. When I went to school, I've never really struggled in school. I've been really, really good in school my entire life, but I never fully understood its purpose. I just kind of went with it. Got by, was smart, could memorize things really easily, and school was just school and kind of going through the motions like everyone else. So when I went to college, I was like, when they ask you what is your major, you have to figure out a major. I couldn't think of anything. So at first I said, I want to go to law school. And they're like, okay, but that's not a major. You need to figure out a major. So I think I originally went to school and I defaulted into political science because I said that I expressed that I was interested in eventually going to law school. That didn't last too long because I was like, wait, do I really want to do something with law? Do I want to be a lawyer? I'm like 17 years old when I start college. And then I decided, you know what, maybe I want to teach kids. I love children. So I switched and I went to elementary education. And then I started to realize I don't like these classes. And I think I was 2 years into my undergraduate degree and I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I really enjoyed my Hawaiian studies and my Hawaiian language courses. So I decided to just take a chance and I became a Hawaiian studies major. I gave a talk last week about how when I went into school, I didn't know what I was doing. And one of the big reasons why I switched over to Hawaiian studies at that point was because I saw Haunani K. Trask. And yeah, I enjoyed my Hawaiian studies classes. I saw some of my heroes on campus and I was like, I'm just going to do this. What am I going to do with it? Who knows, but I'm just going to do it. So I was a Hawaiian studies major and then I eventually got, I enrolled in Kaiāulu as well. So I became a double major, Hawaiian studies and Hawaiian language. And I ended up in the Hawaiian language program because a large part had to do with No'ea Warner. When I was at school, he pushed a lot and he used to say hi to me and try to force me to do things to get more involved in Hawaiian language. One of the things that he really forced me to do was go to Maui Akama, which is a Hawaiian language summer program. And I did that and I eventually graduated. And when I graduated, again, I didn't know what I was doing. At this point in my life, I was working a bunch of retail jobs. Nothing that I wanted to do. I was like selling t-shirts in Waikiki kind of thing. And I didn't know what I was doing. So the easiest thing to do was to further my education. So I applied to 3 master's programs, Hawaiian language, Hawaiian studies, and College of Ed. And because No'ea Warner and other kumu such as Kekeha Solis were very nurturing and nice to me, I decided I was going to go and get my master's in Hawaiian language. And that I started the program. I was terrified because I thought I wasn't good enough to be within the Hawaiian language program, but I learned really quickly that that's just within myself. I ended up getting a graduate teaching assistant position that first semester that I was in the master's program, and I started teaching in spring 2013, and have been teaching at Kawaihualani since. As a GTA, where I had two of my own classes, a lecturer where I got paid by the credit, and I had a full workload of 4 classes every semester. And then when I finally finished my master's thesis, I got a permanent position as an instructor and have been one since 2018. But outside of that, with ʻŌlelo, I realized that I kind of felt a level of safety because my ʻŌlelo community was small. It was within the university setting, and I needed to challenge myself more. So outside of that, I started to take on smaller positions that I could handle with my workload. I was a PTT for some time at Ke Kula Kaiopuniopu Ohala. I did teach at Napua No'eau, and I was a kumu ʻŌleloHawai'i at Kamehameha Kapalama for the summer school program, and I've taught at Kamehameha Maui as well. So I tried to make myself a little bit more rounded, but I always knew that I wanted to reach the community more, and that's where Halepili comes in. And I wish my friend Jenny was here to talk with me and her husband Ray, but Halepili was essentially a group that we created because we wanted to create super cool curriculum for Hawaiian children. To give some background, Jenny and Ray have 4 children, and all 4 of them they had homeschooled. When we first found Halepili, I believe that was in the year 2013, I was actually living with them in Kaneohe and was watching Jenny teach her children at home, like firsthand, and I was like, this is the coolest thing. Because again, remember, I love children. I almost went into elementary education because I love children. So living with Jenny and watching her interact with her kids, it was really cool because we were both all 3 of us actually, me, Jenny, and Ray, were going through our master's programs at the same exact time. I was in Hawaiian language, Ray was in Hawaiian studies, and Jenny went through the College of Ed. So all 3 of us used to take what we were researching in our own individual programs and try to throw it together to come up with cool curriculum for their children. And that's where Halepili starts to come. So their oldest, Alora, I think she's 16 now. So if you do backwards math, however old she was in 2013, I think that's like, I don't know, a while ago, like 7 years old or something like that. We realized if we wanted to have an educational system that was very similar to what we were reading about with our ancestors, with the literacy movement, with family systems, we had to have a way that we were going to have not only us teach the children, but the children teach us, them teach each other, and create a community. So we started with going with passion projects with the kids. And one of the first passion things that Alora got really into was she was taking some classes with Kumulili Kala because she was really close friend with Punihe's daughter, Ha'ena. And they talked about the Kumulipo, and part of that was they had to memorize their mo'oku auhau, and part of that was they had to memorize mo'olelo with their mo'oku auhau, and she started to learn about aumakua and some of their family histories. So one of the first things that Halepili established was her aumakua line. She wanted to create products to share about her aumakua. So her and her mom together drew a bunch of images with their aumakua, and Alora took it upon her to say, we want to take what we're creating now, which we decided to call Halepili, and we took it to an educational conference. And I believe that educational conference was WIPSI, was the first place that we went. And at WIPSI, we signed up for a booth, and we had Alora run her booth. So she was this little kid with her 2 younger brothers running around in circles, her auntie and her mom and dad sitting there watching her as she shared with all these people from throughout the world about her aumakua and why she drew certain things on shirts. And then that kind of started to grow. Jenny and Ray, in some of their classes, they had to write stories, of course, because in Hawaiian language, you have to write books. So they wrote a very short book called Opaye based off of the song. And that turned into curriculum for the kids as well, where they started to do free puppet shows for the community. They went to a bunch of the Kaiapuni schools, they went to Kamehameha preschools and did free puppet shows for them. And then they did some at UH as well for the college students there. After that, we started to learn about plants. So we wrote some books on plants. We wrote some books on fish because they learned about fish. And then Alora came across this challenge that she wanted us to be a part of. And it was run by Purple Maia. And it was called the Purple Prize. And it was the first year that they had this, where we had to pitch an idea for a tech something. So we were going to create an app, and the app actually ends up being created. But Alora at that point was focusing on governance through her grandfather teaching her about that, and was looking at land management systems. And she came up with the idea, with the help of all of us as well, to create an app that focuses on the water cycle. And that app is called Waiwai. If you look at the bottom, you can download it for free for iOS and Android still. There's some tweaks that we need to do right now, and we're in the process of updating it because this was published in 2016. But that was one of the huge things that we did, was a free app that's offered in both English and Hawaiian that looks at the water cycle. So it starts in the mountains and going down into the lo'i, going into the loko'i'a, being able to gather all the things that you need to feed your family. And again, everything that we did there was based off of the curriculum for the children and what they were interested in that point in time. You can visit our website, halepili.com. There's a bunch of things. It's constantly updated. Right now, I think some of the things that are the most recent things that they've been into, for a while, they're living with their ohana on the island of Maui, and their auntie Napua does work with nimu restoration up there in Waihe'e. So they learned about a bunch of different nimu, and their curriculum was centered around that. So that's one of our newest books. And I believe there's some research going on with allodial titles right now. So I think that's some of the stuff that they're doing. But essentially, Halepili started because me and my two friends who have beautiful children came together and wanted to create curriculum for them, and it worked for their children, so we wanted to share it with the community. And now we're kind of, since Alora is getting a little bit older, passing on the reins to her and seeing what they can grow to teach the younger generation. So this Halepili is what I was focusing on while I was doing my master's. Again, it was founded in 2013. I started my master's program in 2012, and I graduated in 2018. So during that time, a large part of my focus outside of school and outside of teaching in those various schools was through Halepili and community engagement there. But after I graduated in 2018, I realized I needed to do a little bit more. So there was a very short period of time where I started to think, okay, Halepili, like, we have all of these things. What can I do next? What can I do next? And I started looking for different avenues. So I thought about going back to school and getting a PhD so I could teach more or learn more. And what ended up happening was the 2019 Mauna Kea movement, which is what builds my, I guess, not builds, but kind of ignites my aloha aina within me. Because for a really long time, I was within the safety of that educational system, right, within the Western institutions. And I think I needed to take a step outside of that. So Halepili was a small step into the community, and I needed to go out further, which is what brought me to Mauna Kea and then eventually Pu'uhuluhulu University, which Kamalei also asked me to talk about. So 2019, still doing Halepili work, still doing work with teaching at UH. I actually just finished teaching summer school at Kamehameha Maui. I was teaching a Papamala'o class, or incoming Papamala'o class, where we focused on Kaikua'ana and Kaikaina relationships. And summer ends, and a text chain starts with a bunch of my friends at the university, where people start to talk about, okay, there's going to be movement on the Mauna, and what are we going to do? And ironically, I finished teaching school for summer school on July 12th, and they wanted us up on Mauna Kea on July 13th. So I couldn't say no to what was happening within the universe. I was like, I need to go up. So I go up to Mauna Kea thinking, as an individual, I'm going to help as an aloha aina. I need to grow myself more. I cannot just be teaching these things within the university system, but not actually doing the hana myself. So I go up to Mauna Kea, and within a week, we go from roughly 30 people within the pu'uhonua to upwards of 7,000 individuals after the Kupuna arrest. And seeing that many people on the Mauna Kea access road in that small area, which grew very big, I was given the opportunity to start to look at things look at the strengths within me and how am I going to better serve my community. So on July 20th, which I believe is the Saturday following the Kupuna arrest, which happened on the Wednesday, my friend Ilima came up to me and said, hey, would you like to schedule some classes or some workshops for people, since there's so many people here? I'm like, of course I can do that. So I went around introducing myself to anyone that I could recognize and asking, hey, would you like to teach a workshop, kind of thing. And while I'm doing this, my friend Sesame Shim says, you shouldn't do workshops, do a conference. And I'm like, oh, okay, I've been to a million conferences. Let's do like hour blocks kind of thing. And then that eventually grew to Kahala Johnson saying, take it a step further, call it a university, stick it to the university. So that's pretty much how Pu'uhuluhulu University came to be. And that's why if you look at this sign, I still don't know who wrote it, but someone stuck it in the ground the first day while I was trying to get all the teachers together. But we called it an actual place of Hawaiian learning in reference to the University of Hawaii and they're doing with TMT, yeah, and Mauna Kea in general. So taking a stab kind of at that. So I offer the first day of classes where there were 20 classes, I believe, on that first day. And I didn't get permission to do this, really. I just did it. Like, it just happened. And I went around with my loud voice and I screamed out loud, hey, there's free classes. And hundreds of people showed up and people liked it. So I ended up doing that every single day for weeks on end until the summer ended. And then I started to malama it for just the weekends once the numbers started to die down. But Pu'uhuluhulu University was the first time that, outside of the comfort of a university setting or with friends, I was able to bring education to the forefront and use what was around me, the people, the knowledge base, the opportunities. And it grew really big. Like, if you look really closely, this kid right here has a sweater with a logo that was created, I believe, by Gonzo at Kanaiokana. But yeah, the university ended up holding thousands of classes by people of all different specialties. We had masters of different types of fields. We had lawyers up there. We had scientists up there. We had historians up there. We had not just Hawaiians. We had people from Aotearoa. We had people from Micronesia sharing their stories. We had people from the Philippines. We had some individuals who came from Palestine. But Pu'uhuluhulu University was a place to nurture education and try to prove to people that education is more than what we understood education to be. But yeah, that's my brief introduction of myself in the works. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions in regards to how I came up with these things and all of that. But mahalo.
Yeah, mahalo, Presley. Mahalo for doing that introduction and, giving us a better sense of, the timeline and how everything started for you. I feel like that's, when I initially heard about Halepili, I was like, oh, has she done this before or after the Mona? and I was kind of confused about which inspired the other. So really mahalo. Going back to your mana'o on the Halepili and that entity, I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you was what inspired you and Jenny and her Kane to start or establish your own publishing entity rather than publishing these books through an already established entity like KS Publishing or other
Yeah.
publishing entities.
I'm a rebel. I've always been a rebel. If you knew me in high school at Kamehameha, like I got in trouble because I wanted to always push the envelope. I was never bad, but I wanted to go against what people create to be the norm. So when it came to Halepili, and I gotta give a lot of credit to Jenny because she dreams big, like she dreams huge, and then you have me who like wants to be like, okay, Lo, let's just do it, let's push it, and then Ray's like, okay, but how are you guys gonna do that? So he's the one that actually kind of makes sure that we get it done, kind of thing. But Jenny dreams big, and then I'm like, well, we're gonna do it, and then Ray kind of makes sure that it gets done, kind of thing. But when it came to publishing, I think we decided to go the self-publishing route. One, because of the types of stories that we were doing. I think having experience like writing articles and having people edit it down, it kind of takes away from what you actually want to say sometimes. And I never want things to be less than what I intended it to be. I always stick to how I feel, and I'm unapologetic in everything that I say. So that was one big reason. But two, it was like I was explaining, I love challenges. It was a challenge within itself. So Jenny did a lot of the research on how to do those types of things, and she got it done and printed a couple, and I was like, wow, this is super cool. Let's see if Alora can do anything with it, because she wanted to do her little sale booth thing, which took off, and people bought it. And then at that point in time, like shortly after, I was taking a class with Kumulili Kala for fun. It was the first time that she offered one of her Oli Makavalu classes, the 400 level one, I believe. Not the Oli Makavalu, but the Papaku one. And I took the class, and one of our final projects was to look at an akua and to create something around that akua. And a bunch of people created PowerPoints, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and write a book. So I wrote a book. I was in the master's program at that time, and my master's thesis was centered around ʻŌlelo nane, or Hawaiian riddles. So I decided to focus on Kanaloa, and I came up with 8 different riddles in regards to Kanaloa, and I titled my book Ku'uwahi'i'a Ewalu Ona Lima, and that was to reference the He'e and Kanaloa. So I was trying to pull my focus for my master's thesis together with this class, and then what I was doing outside with that publishing, and that was the second one that we published. And then after that, I was like, you know what, let's do more. Everything that we could think of, we just started printing. When I went through the master's program, I was actually living in Mililani, so Waipi'o. And anyone on Oahu will like say, if you can skip traffic, especially the evening traffic, right? So I would finish my classes and there would still be traffic. So one thing that I used to do a lot after my classes was I would either hang out at school and do my homework kind of thing, or I like to go to bookstores. So one day I was at Ala Moana and I ended up at Barnes and Nobles for some reason. I was like, let's see what's in this bookstore. So I was walking around and I ended up going by the children books section, and there's lots of workbooks, and I was like, we need these in Hawaiian. So we went home and I was like, okay, we need to do a book, and we did a book. mai ka'a akave, so looking at the Hawaiian alphabet, um, and just trying to create a workbook for our keiki that's in Hawaiian, centered around Hawaiian cultural values. Um, but yeah, just the challenge with that. And then because we were able to figure it out for ourselves, we were able to help other people who wanted to do these things. Um, Jenny is the one who is like super personable. She makes a lot of friends all over the place. So she helped out people in Waimanalo. She helped out her auntie in Waihe'e to do the Limu book. Um, at one point, I was working with one of the schools on Kauai to create Hawaiian language materials for the Ni'ihau children. Um, but yeah, I think it mostly had to do with control and looking at the narrative of who's to say we have to go through a legit publishing company. We can just do it ourselves. Why aren't we doing this ourselves? And that you can kind of see that reflected in how I did the university at Pu'uhuluhulu too. Like, who's to tell me I cannot call this a university? It's a university by my standards. You're not going to tell me it's not. Everyone's like, oh, where's your accreditation? I'm like, through the Lahui. Um, I hope that answered the question.
No, yeah, definitely it did. I think sometimes I can see how publishing through like an already established entity, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of processes, and it often takes longer to get books out. So, our bookstore, we order books from you, and it's like we see how many books you have that aren't even like on your website necessarily, and it's awesome to see you guys pushing out these books and just coming up with your own content. Yeah, I think similarly, was there anything particular that you saw in keiki books that are already out there in the community that like certain things that were lacking in those books that really pushed you and you wanted to focus on when you published your own book?
Yeah, I don't think we ever, I'm going to speak for myself, but I don't think Jenny them either. I don't think we ever compared ourselves to other Hawaiian materials by Hawaiians or Hawaiian language materials in general. We mostly compared to the lack of it. So seeing how many English materials there were. Um, I remember being like, there's so much more nowadays, which is the greatest thing in the world. But I remember being at Pu'ohala and helping a teacher move into the classroom and being confused why there was 6 huge cardboard boxes filled with English books and being told we couldn't get rid of it, and me asking, but why? It's English, send it to the English side then, and them saying no, because you might need the books for your materials. And then you hear stories, because I didn't go to immersion, I didn't know what it was like. But you hear stories about people my age or older when they were going through the immersion program and their book was literally an English book with taped over Hawaiian words. And I think that's kind of what I was comparing to. I never compared it to like the Hawaiian language materials that exist. I was just understanding that compared to the English language materials, there's so few Hawaiian language materials. And um, I just wanted to add more to that. I think another thing was going through my master's program, like, that was during the time where people started to get into adult coloring books. And I was like, rah, what if I made a kid coloring book but with really intricate details, and then it can be an adult coloring book too? And that's kind of some of the things that we did as well. But yeah, I don't think I ever compared to the already published Hawaiian works. It was more so the lack of. And
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think
because there's a lot of great ones. You know what I mean?
right, yeah, I feel like the ʻŌlelo resource like keiki books that are out there are good. I was more so talking about how there's so many keiki books that are about Hawaiian content but don't have any connection to like ʻŌlelo or ʻŌleloHawai'i. So yeah, I think one of my favorite out of your books was the Ku'uahi'a Evalu'ona because it's such a Hawaiian like way of like storytelling, but also like playfulness and like there's like this activity involved in it, and it's very different than these other English resource material like keiki books, and getting keiki even at like a young age to think about these kind of mane and to play like that, I think it's really interesting. Follow-up question was, out of the books, I've said that Wahi is my favorite, but out of the books that you've published, do you particularly have a favorite?
I don't know if I have a favorite, but the one that I got obsessed with the most was that workbook, my Ka'akave. Because we pulled things that we had from each of our books and all of our stories to create a workbook. And I love children. But my favorite age group is when they're like in Punana or in Papamala'o and they're learning the hakalama. Like, I think it's the cutest, it's the most adorable thing ever. And that's why I love teaching right before the mauna, teaching that age group. It was like the best thing. But I think that's my favorite book because it goes from like using the mo'olelo that we have in Opae and using the puhi and saying just follow the lines on the puhi for fine motor skills kind of thing when you're learning to write, and then eventually writing the entire pi'apa and then building the hakalama and then building words. Like, I think that's my favorite book because I was able to incorporate like ʻŌlelo no'eau and nane within it as well. And I don't know, I'm most proud of that one, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking about the mauna, did you ever have like ʻŌleloHawai'i classes split up by age? Like, did you have keiki ʻŌleloHawai'i classes as well as
Yeah,
adults?
so when I first started the university, one thing that I tried to do is the way that if you never went up, the way that I had the classes set up was there were 4-hour blocks, and within those 4 different hour blocks, there were 5 classes that happened during those hours. And I tried to make it a thing where every single hour, and it got harder later on because if you can't find the kumu, you can't find the kumu. But I tried in the beginning really hard to make it so that every single hour block had an ʻŌlelo class. And I had to learn as I went along, right? So in the beginning, I was like, okay, if we're gonna do it every hour, what if someone wants to take ʻŌlelo all day? So I did introductory, keiki class, middle, and an advanced. And ended up not working because, people would come and drop in at the advanced time and they'd be like, oh, but I want to take an ʻŌlelo class, like, kind of thing. So it changed a little bit and became a little bit more go with the flow. I had to understand what was going on, who was the target audience up there kind of thing. But yes, I had ʻŌlelo classes. I think that was the most classes that I've had on the mauna. Because that's, like, if you can find someone who can speak Hawaiian, they can teach it, even if they don't believe that they can. If you can speak, and it doesn't need to be, like, you don't need to be the most pueko person in the world, but if you can speak, there are people who can learn from you. So, had a lot of Hawaiian language classes, but yes, I did have age group focuses. I had, for like the first day, I think I had Wahine Hula. She taught a keiki class on ʻŌlelo because I forced her to. But yeah, there was a ton.
In terms of like acquiring and like asking people to teach ʻŌlelo classes, how were you received? Like, was it easier to find kumu, or was it a little bit harder? Were people coming to you to ask if they could teach classes?
Okay, so in the beginning, absolutely not. It was the most difficult thing. Like, I reflect on it, and sometimes I think, how did I survive? Like, physically survive. If you knew me, or if you saw me on the mauna, I was a hot mess. The way that I first was establishing the classes, I went up to the mauna with barely anything, but I had a random notebook. I don't know whose it is. Still to this day, I have it. It's really cool because I have a bunch of people's names and phone numbers and when they were on the mauna. But I had this notebook, and I'd go around and just introduce myself to people. I'm like, hey, what's your name? What do you know? And I'd write down all these things. What's your phone number? How long are you here for? And then I would sit there and try to make a block schedule and fill in people and like beg people, can you please teach? Can you please teach? If you'll notice, like if I know on the Pu'uhuluhulu Instagram, they still have those schedules up. If you notice, a lot of my name is on there. It's because I needed to fill in pukas. So sometimes it was hard. Sometimes it was easy to the point where I had like to turn people away because I had too much teachers for that particular day. So it was dependent on how many people were on the mauna, really. During the summer where people were coming up every single day kind of thing and flying as frequently as they could, it was a lot easier. When people had to go back to school, because a lot of people who were teaching were teachers themselves within a school system, I had to search a little bit harder. That's when I started to get like kupuna to teach classes, and I'm like, Uncle Kini, what you want to talk about today? And he's like, oh yeah. And I have no idea what he's going to talk about ever. Or asking Auntie Pua Kanaka Ole Kanahele if she'd like to teach chant classes. Like, yeah, it depends. It was hard sometimes, and sometimes it was hard because I had too many people. It was all different, and I could never tell what it was going to be like.
Yeah, I remember when we had gotten back from the Hawaiian Youth Abroad program, Nalani like brought me over and we were talking story, and you were just very like, yes, you're teaching. And it was like, I can see how you would just like made it happen, got the teachers, and I feel like everybody that, had that you need to learn and really join those ʻŌleloHawai'i classes are just appreciative that they got to experience classes outside of, a formal setting that, often you have to pay for.
Yeah, and another big thing with that was convincing people that they were good enough to teach, yeah? Like,
Yeah.
they were qualified. And I had to, like, change that narrative within people, and myself included, that I'm qualified to be teaching people. I had high schoolers from Navahi one day, an entire Friday, they took over the university, and it was like the best thing.
Yeah. I think, I just keep thinking about like the whole structure of Pu'uhuluhulu, and I think a lot of the reach that it had and the style of classes and stuff. I think something that I always think about is if it could ever be replicated, like in a virtual form or like in a physical conference form, like how it was. What's your minute on that?
Yes. So, the way that it was set up, of course, I shared like I wanted to create a conference who kind of bled into a university. But when I did that, I didn't even have the space to do it. Like, me and Ilima were up at, I think it was like 6:30 in the morning, walking around and like, where are we gonna have these classes? Oh my gosh. I'm like, the paw. Just make the university, and like that's where I'm gonna establish myself. But when I was trying to like create like classrooms, like a lot of people would question me a lot, and they're like, why don't you get individual tents for the classrooms? That would be so much better. I'm like, no. We're in a thing where within the educational system, we're trying to do place-based learning, right? We are in the elements. We are here for a reason. We need to experience those things. But also, I started to reflect on like some of my research and some of the things that I did in school, like in Hawaiian studies, and in my master's when I was reading other people's papers. Like, I really got interested in the literacy movement, right? And that's something that I reflected on, because for our kupuna, we went from an oral language, so zero literacy, right, to one of the highest literacy rates in the world by 1832 or something like that. It was in the 90 percentile. And how did that happen? It's because people were excited to learn. It was never forced. And that's what I wanted to kind of show within Pu'uhuluhulu University. Nothing was forced. No one was told you have to go to classes now. People weren't in classes. They just weren't. They could be across the street. They could be talking story at kupuna. They could be in their car. They could be sleeping in their tent. I don't care. No one cares what you were doing. But it was open. And because it was so open and you saw a lot of people up there, that kind of encouraged people to go as well, and it just kept on growing and growing and growing. But within that, like, I kept on reflecting about things I read where how did they figure out the literacy rates for Hawaiians? Well, it's because they had these tests where Hawaiians would sit out in like this open area for a long period of time to prove, like, let me prove to you that I can read this. And that's what I would see every time that I would see the paw. I'm like, holy crap, this is stuff that our kupuna did before. So I was trying to mimic something that happened before. Of course, something is going to mimic something that happened on the Mauna, because that was a big thing for all of us. And that's one thing that I like to share with people is like, it wasn't because of me. I was like, people are like, oh, Chancellor. I'm like, no. I was the guru. I was the one walking around with the book trying to call and bother people to schedule classes. It was all the people who were teaching and all the people who showed up to learn from them that made that such a big and important part of our movement. But yeah, it could definitely, and it has been. You saw when people were out at Hunananiho, they started to create a university there, right? And classes in the community. You saw at Kahuku, people were having classes there. In Kauai, they were having classes. You even see, like, once Corona hit and we were all stuck in our like little isolation bubbles, you see programs such as Kanaiokana, and they like were like, this is our chance, get online, do it now. Like, people are doing it just in different like ways because we're not all physically in one space, but that could happen again very easily.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of this, there's been an influx in, online classes that are teaching ʻŌlelo now, and even just the last ʻŌlelo Kaiulu series that I did, that was talking with Maluhia and Emily, like how they're using social media, and even Kanola, all of those little videos that are living, in the virtual realm that people are tuning into to questions either in the chat or through Facebook Live. Else that you wanted to talk about? I have one more follow-up question, PD, to Halepili. If you had any advice for people who think they have like this super good idea in terms of a keiki book or even just like ʻŌleloHawai'i resource material and are thinking of publishing on their own, if you have advice for them.
Just do it. Do your research. Like, that's what's happening. Like, you look at all of these small businesses that are popping up. Like, compare now to even just 5-10 years ago, there's so many small Hawaiian-owned businesses. And it's because why? Because everyone's just like, no, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. They did it. I'm going to do it. There was a point in time there was like 2 or 3 Hawaiian clothing shops that you could get something from, right? Now it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many people. Like, this is insane. My advice is to just do it. Do your research, figure out some places that you can, reach out to friends that have done it. For Halepili, if you contact us and you want to like go through us with publishing, Jenny has done that for people before. There's a process for doing that. So yeah, just my advice is always to just, if you believe in what you want to create strong enough, then there's no reason why you shouldn't do it. And that's why I'm kind of sporadic when it comes to my buildings of things, my creations. Like, sometimes I'll get so heavy into art and that's all you'll see on my personal Instagram pages, art. And then sometimes I'm so heavy into curriculum with Hawaiian language where all you'll see is a bunch of PowerPoints that I'm posting. Like, I think you just gotta follow, like, if you think something's good and you think it's gonna help the community, just do it. And that's what I do. No shame. And the great thing is, like, when you share things along the way, like how Maluhia guys do, Like, holy crap, they get a bunch of people like sharing how it helps them, asking for advice on things, giving room for improvement. Maybe you should do this, and then it helps you. Like, you know what I mean? Um, yeah, I think the thing with Hawaiians and our lahui in general is just we're at this point where a lot of us are recognizing that we need to support one another and we need to rely on each other more rather than outside, yeah? So you can look at things as small as businesses, shopping Hawaiian owned businesses. That makes a difference. We know it makes a difference. Okay, well, let's support people with the things that they know how to do. So just do it. I don't know. I hope that answers the question. Sometimes I go on tangents.
No, it's perfect. Yeah, and say people have these ideas, but they don't necessarily have like the resources. Would you encourage people to kind of like put in requests with Halepili to like for certain things that they want to see?
Me, yeah. And there's other people doing stuff too. You know what I mean? And
Right.
the thing with me is like, and you'll notice this that we'll do this sometimes. Sometimes printing an actual book is so much work that it's more important to just get the materials out there. So you'll like for a while we had a link on our website where it was just free downloads. And that's a way for people to be able to get some of the stuff that we think are cool, that we're working on, that we don't have the time or the means to actually print it in a book. Those things are great. Um, I think like social media, Kanuola, oh my gosh, people love him and his mom. Like, you know what I mean? That's making a huge difference. You don't need to actually go out and print something. If you want to, you can, but that's not something that you necessarily need to do in order to grow things as well. Like, look at his following. Huge. Way bigger than me. Like, I'm like this just tiny thing. Um, but yeah, I think it would again, Halepili is just me, Jenny, Ray, and the kids. And me, Jenny, and Ray all have full time jobs. So sometimes we cannot do everything, right? And people ask us all the time, and sometimes we just have to turn them into a direction like, oh, maybe you should try this kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I think biggest advice is to reach out to your community, see what you can do. Sometimes it takes something as simple as like a simple Google search, like, or creating like the most recent thing that I personally did is I'm like building PowerPoints right now for new kumu at in our department in Kawaihualani. Um, and it's just so that there can be a Google Drive with things that they can pull from within our department. You could do something bigger like that with like the wider community. Like you can do a virtual online or downloadable or something like that too.
I feel like Waihona is a good template, but it's because it's only accessible for Kumu right now. I feel like that's the big the setback currently. But yeah, sharing those kinds of resources with the community, I feel like there's a need for that right now. Everybody is looking to learn, and whether they're able to join formal classes or just go online, I feel like you know
Yeah, and don't be afraid of the established publishing companies either, because that's their only focus, right? And they have huge teams. I've worked with other individuals to help them to go through the publishing process with other publishing businesses like Kamehameha Publishing. Don't be afraid of those things either. It's a process, of course, but like just do it.
Well, yeah, mahalo nui, Presley, for joining me today. I know you're super busy, but I personally, really enjoyed talking story with you about Halepili, which I feel like is the less known about, venture of yours in terms of relating to Pu'uhulu. But yeah, it doesn't seem like we have any questions from any of the people on the webinar as well as Facebook. So I just wanted to send people to follow Halepili on Instagram, as well as check out their website. And their website is mainly where you can purchase their books that they sell and they publish, and as well, they're also available here at Native Books. But yeah, Presley, mahalo nui for joining.
Mahalo. Yeah, sorry for all the cookies too. I tried to mute every so often because I realized
it's not super loud, but yeah,
okay,
like ambience.
okay. But yes, mahalo nui. Yeah, hopefully if anyone walks away with anything, it's just do whatever your na'au is pulling you to do. And if it's gonna benefit our lahui, then your kupuna are gonna help you to get to there. And there's different avenues for it. And sometimes you have to do stuff like how we did, where you're like, okay, you know, it's too hard to go through those other ones. I'm gonna do it for myself. But yeah.
Main takeaway is just do it.
Yep.
All right, and this will conclude our formal webinar. But mahalo nui for everyone for joining, both in the webinar and on Facebook Live. Mahalo nui. Hui hou.
Mahalo.